Yes. Absolutely yes. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom releases in just a few days, and I am confident when speedrunners get their hands on it, they're going to absolutely destroy this game. As someone who has nearly a decade of speedrunning experience, I have seen time and time again how a new game comes out, and speedrunners within hours find all sorts of insane exploits and glitches, just so they can save their precious frames. Now, I can already hear some of you typing, "There's no way, the game's been in development for 6 years and Nintendo only makes high quality games. There's no way they would let this game have any bugs or glitches." I agree, Nintendo usually makes solid games, especially compared to the AAA gaming scene right now. I'm not saying this game is going to be a buggy disaster like Fallout 76 or Cyberpunk or Redfall. However, I am saying speedrunners are very resourceful, and any bugs they find will be used to great effect. Don't believe me? Fine, let's make a bet. I bet at least one game-breaking glitch is discovered within the first day of the game releasing. And if I'm right, you all have to click the subscribe button. Now I know what you're thinking. How is it that I'm so confident? Well, after seeing what speedrunners have done with the previous game in the series, I have no doubt in my mind that Tears of the Kingdom will be just as broken, if not more so, than the previous game in the series, Zelda Breath of the Wild. But that begs the question, exactly how broken is Breath of the Wild actually? And how likely is it that any of Breath of the Wild's speedrun mechanics transfer over to Tears of the Kingdom? Well, a good place to start to try and answer that question is to look at the any % speedrun for Breath of the Wild. But first, let's quickly go over what exactly is necessary to complete Zelda Breath of the Wild, as well as how speedrunners finish these objectives quickly. First, after the starting cutscene, Link wakes up and grabs the Sheikah Slate. Second, Link needs to complete the 4 shrines in the Great Plateau and acquire the 4 major runes: Bombs, Magnesis, Stasis, and Cryonis. Third, Link needs to return to the Temple of Time and receive the Paraglider in order to remove the invisible barrier that locks us in the Great Plateau. And lastly, kill Ganon. Yeah, this game really just lets you go straight to the final boss right after finishing the tutorial section. So that's all that's necessary for finishing the game normally, but let's see exactly how speedrunners get through this game. And thankfully, my good friend and Breath of the Wild speedrunner, Adef, sat down with me to help show me exactly how broken Breath of the Wild speedruns really are.
Okay, so we are now going to do Shrine of Resurrection skip. You'll remember from playing the game casually that you have to usually run out into this room and there's like this second tablet you interact with, and there's a big cutscene where Zelda's like, "Link, you are the light," and then you go out and there's that beautiful cutscene that shows you all of Hyrule. We don't want to watch any of that, because watching that cutscene is actually what starts time of day. So in Breath of the Wild, there's a 24-hour clock. Daytime is better than nighttime because at nighttime, like, stall enemies spawn. Also, this clock dictates weather progressing, so like that's how you get rain and thunderstorms and stuff. So by doing Shrine of Resurrection skip, we never watch that cutscene, so it will permanently be 5:40 a.m. So what we are going to attempt to do is we are going to run into this corner, and I'm going to angle myself at a very specific spot, and so I'm just mashing here, and I got it first try, and now I'm out of bounds. There's a couple spots to clip back in bounds, but the fastest spot to clip back in bounds is right here. It's pretty precise. There's just a thin piece of wall collision here that I'm going to try to stand up out of crouch, like that.
After clipping back in bounds, runners perform a technique called whistle sprinting, which allows them to continue sprinting with no stamina cost. They then grab this pot lid, which is the first shield of the run, as well as this Bokoblin spear. Shields are very useful for many reasons in this game, but for the speedrun, most common uses will be shield surfing, which speeds up movement on sloped surfaces, shield jumping, which essentially gives Link a double jump in a lot of scenarios, and lastly, skew, which is a very complicated glitch that absolutely breaks this game. I would try and explain skew myself, but that's why I have the expert here.
So, there's a cool glitch called skew. And what skew is there is this wacky thing where if I land on my shield on anything that is not flat, so let's say I do it right here. Now I'm going to do a running shield jump. And I'm going to unequip my shield in midair, watch Link's model, and see how it's probably gonna jitter for like 2 frames to one side. You see that? That's skew. Skew is very interesting because that momentary pop allows you to clip through walls.
So with this skew glitch active, shield jumps can clip Link through thin pieces of geometry. This skew clip lets runners enter the Temple of Time slightly faster than normal so they can grab the first bow of the run. Now, I know the run only just started, but this next glitch is probably the most broken looking speedrun tech I have ever seen.
So I'm going to open this chest and get our first bow, the Traveler's Bow. It will be used for a glitch called BLSS. BLSS stands for Bow Lift Smuggle Slide. We're gonna use this pot. So I am going to pull out my bow and pick up the item to interrupt the bow pull, and you'll notice that I'm holding the bow and the item. While jumping, I press B, which starts to drop the item, and while doing that, I go into my pause menu and manually unequip my shield. And if I pull my bow, you'll now notice I'm pulling the bow, but the item is still in Link's hand. I'm now going to press B. Watch when I turn around, Link like weirdly gets pushed a little bit. Typically, you can turn around without moving, but Link is slightly moving when I turn around.
I see that.
Okay, the item in my hand, we'll say for a very bastardized explanation, it's pushing me. So now that I'm in this wacky sort of state, there will be this kind of strange thing where if I step up onto a ledge, Link like gets suspended in animation for a second. If I hold B while this is happening, I will stay flying. Every object you hold pushes you differently and at different speeds. The best items are generally smaller, rounder objects. This pot is really, really good. And I'm gonna turn around and Link is gonna start flying in the opposite direction. I am going to quickly turn left and right in rapid succession so that the vectors are adding behind me, canceling out the horizontal component, and just adding backwards.
So you're gonna wiggle.
I'm going to wiggle.
So yeah, after performing these obscure sets of actions, you can just fly. You just fly. However, right now, the BLSS is dependent on having an item to pick up. So wouldn't it be nice to always have an object available to pick up so we can just fly whenever we want? And thankfully close by is one of the 4 shrines here in the Great Plateau. This one happens to be the Bomb Shrine that gives Link access to bombs whenever needed at the press of a button. And would you look at that? These bombs are a similar shape and size to the pots we saw earlier. I guess all we have to do is BLSS over to the Bomb Shrine and, oh.
Now that I've reached the bomb shrine, I'm about to do something called a throw damage cancel. When you throw a weapon, and then while you are throwing, unequip anything from the sub menu, it cancels the throw animation. It then sets that as the new height you're falling from. So if you do it right before you hit the ground, you will not take any fall damage. This was initially discovered to get down from the Great Plateau Tower faster than climbing down. But you'll notice I haven't raised the Great Plateau Tower yet. And the reason that this is relevant is because activating the Great Plateau Tower is what allows you to interact with the shrines. So I can't get in, let me in. So I'm gonna have to clip in. And you'll notice that we had a trusty friend we learned about earlier, Skew.
Skew, yeah, Skew. I was gonna say Skew.
Okay, so I'm gonna get Skew. You'll notice my Skew is pretty big, it's fucking massive. I'm gonna get under this second triangle and aim sort of just like right there. And I'm gonna do a small shield jump. Unequip my shield, and I'm in. This is step 1. I now need to get back in bounds. If you lose Skew in here, you're fucked and have to go back out and redo it, but I just clip back in. But I can go down into the shrine.
Now that we're in the Bomb Shrine, Link quickly runs over to the Apple Store and downloads the Bomb app to his iPad. This gives the player access to 2 different types of bombs, circular bombs and square bombs. So not only are bombs useful for the BLSS glitch, they can also be used to perform wind bombs, which can launch you up high into the air from pretty much anywhere.
So we now have bombs. When I jump and place the bomb room in midair, it lands behind me. Now, the beauty of this is if I place the 2 bombs in quick succession while Link is in midair, and I blow up the bomb that is furthest from me, it will strike the bomb in between the 2 of us, and then that middle bomb will then fly forward really fast and hit Link as a physical object. It sends you flying.
And with a well-placed wind bomb, Link is thrust to the very end of the shrine, skipping pretty much everything. With the first of the 4 shrines complete, the next closest shrine to complete is the Magnesis Shrine. So speedrunners set up yet another BLSS, this time using the bomb rune to zoom across Hyrule straight to the next shrine. Again, runners have to use their skew to clip into the shrine using very precise angles and setups. And again, at the start of the shrine, Link needs to download the Magnesis app before proceeding with the rest of the shrine. Magnesis allows Link to manipulate metal objects like these plates on the floor, blocking access to the rest of the shrine. Shortly after, runners then set up another wind bomb that again skips to the very end of the shrine. After that, the next shrine to complete is the Stasis Shrine, which is all the way over here. And the fastest way to get there is, you guessed it, another BLSS. But this one's incredibly tricky to perform, because this BLSS requires that Link gets pushed uphill. This means Link can easily get stuck on small bumps or get launched into weird directions and lose a lot of speed. After traversing this long section, runners climb up this tree, scope in with the Sheikah Slate, and find a visual cue to set up for a tree-assisted wind bomb. Just like the previous versions of wind bombs, the goal is to get launched high up into the air, and if performed correctly, runners will land right in front of the stasis shrine. Then they will again take advantage of skew to clip into the stasis shrine. And again, this shrine is completely trivialized by another wind bomb. Interestingly enough, outside of the stasis shrine is a large rock.
That's just a stupid boulder!
And much like the Pioneers, speedrunners take advantage of the newly acquired stasis rune to freeze the rock and then attack it in just the right way to send it flying at a very useful angle to fly up this mountainside, skipping a lot of unnecessary climbing. After flying up this large wall, runners quickly blow up this tree to set up a BLS using the stump as the launching point. They then have to carefully maneuver around the terrain to make it up to the Cryonis shrine. From here, there's a few ways runners can clip into the shrine, by either doing a slightly faster version with an extended shield clip, which requires multiple frame perfect inputs, or by doing a normal shrine clip that's slightly slower. And once again, once we're inside, we use another wind bomb. You're starting to see the pattern, right? And just like that, all 4 shrines of the Great Plateau are completed. Runners then BLSS all the way back to the Temple of Time to receive the paraglider. This cutscene also unlocks the rest of Hyrule to the player by removing all the invisible barriers around the Great Plateau. And with the tutorial section done, all that's left is to gear up and kill Ganon. Here would be a great time to discuss amiibo and how it impacts the run. Yeah, amiibo. You remember those little collectible toy things that Nintendo was selling for like 20 bucks? As it turns out, amiibo have an RF chip that will interact with various Nintendo games, usually giving you some sort of small benefit while you're playing. Well, in Breath of the Wild, different amiibo figures can impact the gameplay in significant ways. Things like spawning in special weapons, armor, and food items are all available by using the amiibo. And being gifted a bunch of free stuff is honestly pretty good in a speedrun. In any percent, however, amiibo is really only used to spawn in a bunch of fish that can be used to cook powerful meals. Whether you're using amiibo or not, at some point in the run, runners will acquire materials that will be used for cooking powerful meals and potions to help buff up Link for the upcoming fights. Anyways, once runners get the paraglider, they then do the longest BLSS of the run to fly across Hyrule straight to the castle to prepare for the endgame. Once in Hyrule Castle, runners loot some of the best weapons and arrows in the game, like the Royal Claymore and ancient arrows that do massive damage to the final bosses. One thing to note is that these enemies are insanely powerful and can all kill Link in a single hit. But a lot of these enemies are holding the powerful weapons that we need in order to finish the run. So, in order to get those weapons, runners distract the enemies, then crouch up behind them and perform a sneak strike to do critical damage and kill them quickly. And at world record level, speedrunners will use another scope clip to go out of bounds while in Hyrule Castle to get around much faster than normal. Before starting the Blight fights, runners will shoot a very precise arrow shot while walking into the cutscene of the first Blight spawning in. If done properly, the arrow will be constantly hitting the first Blight while the cutscene is happening, causing the Blight to spaz out. This is actually doing damage to the boss the whole time the cutscene is playing. After that quick kill, runners will then have to fight the rest of the bosses, using all the gear they picked up in Hyrule Castle perfectly in order to do enough damage to beat the required bosses.
We want to get as many double hits as possible down to the bottom of the stamina wheel and knock him down. Into second phase. Again, I'm doing this much damage, A, because my weapons are really good, B, because I have that triple up attack potion. So now I need to headshot him to knock him down. So you have to get good at headshotting these guys. This one is right there. A lot of the weapons in Hyrule Castle are the strongest weapons in the game, but they often have really low durability. And so literally every individual hit on each boss in the boss rush is routed. The any percent world record is so finely routed on the fights that if you don't get any extra arrows, it is arrow perfect. You get extra damage on a weapon if you throw it and it breaks on them. So when your weapon is one hit away from breaking, you want to throw it. Okay, that's all the blights. Okay, Calamity, this fight is a waking nightmare. So 3 things have to happen. 1, you need to get every flurry rush you can, which is that thing where you dodge an attack right as it's happening. 2, If you are on world record pace, you should shield parry every laser. 3, the first phase, you are just shooting arrows at this motherfucker's head whenever you're not flurry rushing. So, the way second phase works is you pray to the Lord on high that he opens with a laser. Because if he opens laser, you can strike him down and then you're good to go. Because there is a genuinely free stun lock on second phase. You get on Calamity's back right side behind, like by his legs. And while he's getting up, you spin attack his legs and his torso. Your goal is to hit him at least 3 times, so you get like at least a couple spins. You release, and the shockwave hits him during his transition, and he falls back down. And you just rinse repeat that with your strongest two-handed weapon until he dies. And that's the end of the fight.
And after defeating Calamity Ganon, honestly, the ending fight is mostly just an auto-scroller. The runners just have to shoot light arrows at the right spot, and there it is. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild getting absolutely destroyed in under 24 minutes. And now is the hard part. How do I try and convey that Tears of the Kingdom will likely be as broken as Breath of the Wild is? Well, for one, this game is new, but is still running off the same game engine as Breath of the Wild. Just like how Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are 2 different games, but they share many of the same game assets and have similar glitches. Very likely, some of Breath of the Wild's glitches will be very difficult to patch out, since they are consequences of the game engine itself. Also, Tears of the Kingdom is a game designed around having its systems interacting. It's going to have a ton of new enemies, new items, new mechanics that are all going to have thousands and thousands of unique interactions between them. And it's just impossible to have a QA tester find every possible bug with that many unique interactions. Also, I don't know how else to say this, but as a speedrunner, these new runes just scream glitch potential. Sending things back in time, I can already see some potential bugs if you say move something in the path of the object that's being recalled. The fuse rune, this one I think has the most potential for one of the most innocuous but one of the most potent kinds of glitches, menu underflows. Without getting into too much detail, programming menus to work 100% perfectly every single time when there's thousands of unique interactions between items and how you can move and sort them around in the menus is really hard. And even Breath of the Wild didn't do this 100% correctly. Ultra Hand rune. This rune lets you move and manipulate objects as well as stick them together. Anytime you see a game that allows you to manipulate objects with this much freedom, I can't help but think that there's going to be some sort of glitch or exploit that comes from that. Last but not least is the Ascend rune, and honestly, do I even have to say anything else other than it's a rune that lets you travel through solid objects. It's like they turned the scope clip into its own mechanic. There will surely be out-of-bounds exploits found by using this rune. Anyways, that was my thoughts on the speedrun potential of the upcoming Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I also want to give a huge shout out to adef for helping explain the Breath of the Wild speedrun to me, and to Player5 for a lot of the speedrun footage used. You can follow both of them in the links in the description. adef also told me to tell you guys that you should totally watch his 100% speedrun of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And of course, a huge shout out to my patrons that make these videos possible, including Arakato, Mr. Cigar, Lieutenant CYX, Clint, Soma Jean, TJ Foster, Atomic Dracula, Suchioto, Kenneth, Chaosvania, Jokum Palm, and WJB.